Hey students, and welcome to our next session on TCS Digital. Let's go ahead and continue from the program that we left off in the last session. So I hope all of you remember the particular program that we were working on in the last session, which was a hollow diamond problem. And the hollow diamond problem that we were particularly working on was where we should print something on this nature, something on this particular order. So I'll just take a screenshot of this so that we can have the same thing over here. So welcome to our live session on TCS Digital. And from the coming session, we'll also be ensuring to cover all the programs that you can possibly expect from TCS Digital, as well as from the concepts of Infi, that is hack with Infi or Infi TQ, all of these interviews where you can expect possible questions as well. I have a couple of questions before I go ahead. So I have one question: when will we be working through the bank problem? In a session we will be doing that. I hope I've also shared the whole code to you, which you have access to if you want to go through it by the time. I have one question: will 2022 batch TCS paid NQT 2021 students, those are going through August or for 2022, a different notification will come up, so can you apply it or not? So at Divya's question, please do go through the TCS official portal, that is for TCS NQT. As far as I remember, let me just confirm within the next few seconds. As far as I remember, as of now, it is for 2021, that is who are eligible over here. So you can definitely give it a check as to what is the eligibility criteria in their official website, which is available, which you can definitely get through. So you can definitely get to know the eligibility over there. Right now for TCS 2021, which starts in like as we know, August and August as well as September 2021. So anyone who has cleared as of last year, or there's the age limit of 18 to 28 or something like that. So anyone within this range who's cleared will be able to apply. The only difference is there should be a maximum academic gap of 2 years. That's it. And of course, no active backlogs. So let's go ahead very quickly and work through. Before going ahead, I have one more question that I'll just take up and answer. Again, I have one or two questions from one of you. There is one of you stating that the voice is not clear. So to everyone in live chat, can you guys just confirm if you can hear me properly? If I'm audible well, you guys can just confirm. So people in live chat can just put one message like yes, able to hear, or audio is working as well, so I can at least get to know that it's perfect. I have one question: will these coding problems questions that are being solved help with coding round of persistent systems? They could. You never know if a company could ask questions like this, but most companies ask similar questions, so you can definitely expect such questions in most of the interviews. That is what I would always state, because the programs that we are going to go through, or the programs we are going through, are going to be helpful in a lot of scenarios. All right, so very glad that everybody can hear and see the screen perfectly. So glad to hear that. So let's go ahead and continue from here as to where exactly we left off. At Kalesh's question, you can just let me know later on regarding that. I'll and let me know which test cases or what is the scenario that is not being cleared, because the question is very vague. So you can communicate with me later on. I'll definitely help you through that. All right. So let's go on without taking too much of time away. So if you guys remember, we had solved this program halfway through, and we had executed it with some numbers like, let's say, 7 or 9, only odd number, and we got it till here. We still have the last part yet to write. If you guys remember, the spaces is yet to be written and stars part is yet to be written. This part of the pyramid is yet to be written. So how are we going to solve this? I'll take the same scenario very, very quickly. This was the small assignment for all of you yesterday. I hope you were all able to solve it. Let's see. I hope you were all able to solve it very, very easily. So let's just give it a try from our end as well. So I'll only take 3 rows here. If you guys were able to solve it, you guys can just post the for loop as well in live chat. Let's see how many of you were able to solve it. If you found it difficult, do not worry. I will ensure to help and solve it through. Now, here's the thing. In our first half of the pyramid, if you guys remember, this was the first half of the pyramid. This is the second half of the pyramid. Second half of the pyramid started with this 2 stars. So let's hold on. Second half of the pyramid, it started like this: 2 stars, 3 stars, and then 4 stars, then 3 stars here, then 2 stars here, and again, 3 stars here, then 2 stars here. So this was the entire logic. Now, if you observe here, again, as always, our best logic is to ensure that we use grids. This will always help us solve such problems. Now, I have one of the answers, that is for spaces we need to use 5 minus 2i. Now, I'm very sorry to say this, but this is going to give us an error. Remember, for 7 lines, I can use 5 spaces here. Fine. But what if my number of lines are 10, or sorry, number of lines are 11? Will number of spaces be 5 even then? No, right? It will change, right? Number of spaces will of course change. It's not just going to be 5 minus 2i to begin with. It's not just going to be that. In our case here, yes, agreed. There is 3 spaces, 1 space, and then 0 space. Correct. But in other programs, it may not be the same scenario. I'll explain why exactly that is the case. So if you guys just observe this. So if you guys just observe this very, very carefully, you can see here there is, in this case, 0 spaces, 1, 2, 0 spaces, 1, 3, 5, and then 3, 1, and 0. So isn't it the same way as we had before? Isn't it running back in the same order? So can I say number of spaces we should start here is the same number of spaces in last second line? Or it is the same number of spaces as we had in last line here, minus 2. Correct, right? So our logic here is that starting number, now remember, it does look like a, it does look like an AP, because here if you see, line number 1, 2, and 3. In line number 1, you have 3 spaces. Line number 2, you have 1. So line number 1, I'll say there are 3 spaces. Line number 2, I'll say we have 1 space. Line number 3, since we have no spaces, I'll write it as minus 1. It really doesn't make a difference if we write it as 0 or minus 1. It's basically the same. So when we do this, when we write it in this order, we can see here particularly in our scenario that it's a AP. It's an AP which is reducing by 2 at a time. But first value will not be 3 always. That is 3 in the case when we have only 7 lines. Now let me execute the same program again here with different number of 11 lines. Are we starting with 3 spaces here? Absolutely not. There's more number of spaces. Since there's more number of spaces, I cannot start with 3. I have to figure out how many spaces are there. Number of spaces here is always 2 lesser than number of spaces before it. Remember, number of spaces here is always 2 lesser than number of spaces before it. And what is going to be the number of spaces before it? That is going to be exactly, if you guys remember this, if there is 3 here, the line below it, before it will always be 5. That is, if you calculate it, it is n minus 2 exactly. So remember here, please remember guys, if you calculate this, the line above this will have n minus 2 spaces. Alright, line above this, please remember, will have n minus 2 spaces. So this line will have minus 2 again. So how many spaces will this line have? N minus 4 spaces. What is n in our case? 7 lines, right? Since we need to print 7 lines, what is 7 minus 4? 3. We got n minus 4 spaces, right? So now we can say here perfectly that we have here n minus 4 spaces. Here will be n minus 6 spaces. Here will be n minus 8 spaces, and so on. This is our logic. We start with n minus 4, and you can say for each time you can do n minus 4 minus 2 and n minus 4 minus 4 and so on. You can keep increasing like this. So that is one way you can solve it. Or the other way that you can solve this, I have a couple of questions. Kindly hold on. One is, after this, can you sort out the bank problem? See, at your question, that question is very vague. All right, I'll repeat this. The question is very vague at Kalesh's question. I hope with the answer that I've shared to you, that was based on the question that was received. All right, the question is very vague. If you share more details, just let me know. After the session, we'll have a conversation. All right, after the session, we'll have a conversation. I'll explain why it was very vague. All right. And I have one question: is aptitude session not conducted from last 2 days? It has been, as far as we are concerned. Please do check the videos. Please do check and follow live so you can get the info. So do check once. So let's go ahead and continue from here. Now, in this case, I hope I've been able to answer the previous question. So let's go ahead back here very, very quickly. So as I pointed out, there are different ways to solve this scenario. So 3, 1 and 0. Can I also compare that? Since we have 3 lines here, remember, since we have 3 lines here, there are 3 spaces. Can I compare with that? I'm not sure. Let's think about it. Is that possible? Instead of spaces here, just to show you, I'll print hyphen instead of spaces to show and compare. Alright, let me just show this in compare. If I take 11, if you guys see, how many spaces do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Below that, there should be 7 spaces, right? Are there 7 lines? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, there are no 7 lines. So I cannot use the logic like number of spaces over here. We cannot do that. We have to do a different way. We have to sort it out in a different way. So I have one question for Prasan. Is these questions are enough to crack TCS NQT Paper Ninja? See, these questions will give you a really good logic to learn how to solve them. So the basic idea here is that when you go through these particular programs, when you go through as many programs as possible like this, you get a better idea on how to solve such programs. So if any similar question is asked, or if a different problem is asked as well, you will be having a good idea on how to solve them. So whatever question you generally expect, whether it's from let's say the same domain or different domain, whether it's from let's say the same example, same question or same type of questions or slightly different type of questions, you can answer. But I'll point out one important thing. This is for all of us to understand. I'll point out one important thing for everyone. When it comes to TCS Digital, what do you think they want to test? Do they want to test your skills on how to Google, or do they want to test your skills on how to code logically? Which skills do they want to test? The second one, of course, not the first one. So if they ask a question which is similar to what we have learned, they will change the title of the question in a very different way. They will change a little bit of logic and they will ask. You cannot expect exact same questions unless you're very lucky. Most of the times what happens is you're going to expect a very similar program. If you know the logic to solve the programs we have worked through, you will also be able to find how to solve the programs that you're going to get. That's the whole idea. I hope that helps answer the question. I will explain this in Python as well. Not to worry. We will do it in Python too. Completely. Don't worry about that. So Let's take a look at this. Now, my question. Now, I'll give this question back to all of you. So now that we are clear with this, I need to figure out how many spaces are there in this line, and I need to reduce the number of spaces by 2. If you guys remember here, in this line, if I have 5 spaces, in the line below it, I'll have 3 spaces. So I should write the number of spaces as 2 lesser. Please remember, 2 lesser than the previous line. That's exactly what we need to do. So we need to keep a track of how many spaces we printed at last. How many spaces did we print in the last line? How many spaces did we print in the last line here, guys? Remember, I goes from line 1 to line n1. Alright, I goes, remember, from line 1 to line n1. Last line is n1. So can I say in last line, number of spaces printed were 2 into n1 minus 3? Can I say this? Number of spaces printed in last line. So just to ensure that everybody remembers, we divided this into 2 separate patterns. Just to know that everybody remembers, we divided our entire program into 2 patterns. Alright, first pattern we have already solved. First pattern, whatever we had here, in this case, that was 4 stars, then 3 stars, then 2 stars, then 1 star. We have already solved this like this. So I'm just going through very quickly so we can save time, because we have already solved this just for us to understand. Now, whatever is the number of spaces here it is 2 lesser than that. Since it is 2 lesser than that, I need to find what were the number of spaces printed here. Now, if you guys remember, if user gives 7 lines are to be printed, we divide it as n1 lines and n2 lines. Now here, I need to find what is the number of spaces in line number n1. To find number of spaces in line number n1, this is for line number I. I need to change it to n1 to get number of spaces in line number n1. That will be 2 into n1 minus 3. 2 into n1 minus 3 is the number of spaces here. So if I go to next line, it should be subtracting 2 with it. So you can say instead of 2 into n1 minus 3, it is going to be here. The first line will have 2 into n1 minus 5. Because this is minus 3, this will be minus 5. Is that clear, guys? Number of spaces will start here, will be considered as 2 into, I'll just point it out very quickly, 2 into n1 minus 5. This is the number of spaces we start with in our second pattern. So let me know, guys, if it is slightly confusing, or if it is clear, you guys can just put one message that it's clear. If it's clear, we'll directly go ahead and figure out the rest. I hope it was very clear. If it was slightly confusing, however, please feel free to let me know. Alright, so I can see that it's clear. Glad to see that. So in this case, if my first line will have 2 into n1 minus 5 spaces, again, throughout the program, any queries, any questions you may have, feel free to ask. Do not worry. Alright. So if our first line will have 2 into n1 minus 5 spaces, next line will have 2 lesser than that. The next line will have again 2 lesser than that. In each line, we are reducing it by 2 at a time. So in that case, I need to somehow figure out how are we reducing it by 2? How can I start reducing this by 2? Same as previous scenario. Exactly same as previous scenario. We do AP. That's it. We do AP. Same logic. Now here, what's the logic? What's the first term? First term is 2 into n1 minus 5. So I can say A equals 2 times n1 minus 5. Now, next is minus 5 minus 2. Next is minus 5 minus 4. If you can see in each of these, the difference is minus 2. Difference is from 3 to 1, it is minus 2. Then 1 to 0, it really doesn't make a difference. So 0 I've just written as minus 1. So the difference is minus 2. So I got to know that A is 2n minus 2n1 minus 5. And the difference D is minus 2. If you got to know this, you can find the formula, that is Ti equals a plus n minus 1 into d, that is 2 times n1 minus 5 into I minus 1, sorry guys, a plus n minus 1 times t, where a value is this, that is 2n1 minus 5 plus, or in this case instead of n I'm calling it as I because ith line, remember. So plus I minus 1 times the difference, the common difference is minus 2. So let us multiply minus 2 over here. So when you multiply minus 2 over here, I into minus 2 will give you minus 2, minus 2 into minus 1 will give you plus 1. So this is what we get. So when you multiply with plus, you get the same value anyway. So let's not worry about that whatsoever. So I'll get here 2n1 minus 5. So this is 2i. So let's 2 into I becomes 2i. Now when you calculate this, minus 5 plus 1 will become minus 4. Then you have minus 2i. Then you have 2n1. So this is the whole logic. This is how many spaces we're supposed to print. 2n1 minus 2i minus 4. If you divide it by 2, you'll get it as n1 minus I minus 2. This is the amount of spaces we're supposed to print. So let's give this a try. If it works, we're not sure. We're really not sure. Let's give it a try. For j equals 1, j less than equal to 2 times. I have one question. One of you is saying it's plus 2. Let me just check. See. Okay, very sorry guys. I think I've made one very big mistake here in calculation. Glad that one of you pointed it out. Our logic would have been very wrong in that case. Minus 1 times minus 2 gives us plus 2. Absolutely right. So very sorry for that. So glad that one of you pointed it out. So now we get something like 2n1. Let's just give it a try. 2n1 minus 5 plus 2, that is minus 3 minus 2i. This is supposed to be number of spaces. It looks a little complicated, but once we were able to figure out the a value and we got to know that it looks like ap, our logic was pretty clear and simple. So let's take this scenario. The condition is, the logic for our case is, I think 2n1 minus 2i minus 3. Absolutely right. That's correct. So we've got this, we've changed this. So let's go ahead and write it as 2 times n1 minus 2 times I minus 3. And we'll do j plus plus. Here we're supposed to print spaces. So let's go ahead and print a space. Now again, by printing a space, we can't get to know if our program is correct or not. So instead, we're going to print something like a hyphen. Let's see. I'll give 7. Now is that correct? It is 3 lines and 1 line. Now let's give something else. Let's give a bigger value. Let's give 15. Is that correct? Absolutely yes. This logic works perfectly well. Now all that we need to do, on the other hand, is just print the stars finally. That's it. Once this is done, we're gonna just need to print the stars. Now here there's gonna be slightly different logic. Remember guys, please note this. In this for loop, how many times am I repeating? N2 times. There are N2 rows here. Row number 1, row number 2, up to row number N2. Now, in this part, row number 1 will have 2 stars. Row number 2 will have 3 stars. But last row will have, N2 will have N2 minus 1 stars. Sorry guys. N2 stars, not N2 minus 1. Because if you observe till here, row number 1 will have, sorry guys, hold on. Row number 1 will have 2 stars. Row number 2 will have 3 stars. Row number 4 will have 5 stars. Row number 5 will have 6 stars. But in last row and last second row, you need to print same stars. Now, why is that the case? Why should we print same stars in last 2 rows? Because according to our logic, we have already printed the middle star in this ascending order. We have already printed the middle star. So we need to print one less star here. So only in last row we'll print one less star. In other rows, if row is I, we're going to print I plus 1 stars. So for each row I, we will print I plus 1 stars. Now we have to write a condition. if I is equal to n2, if we are in the last line, then we have a different logic. If we are not in the last line, we have a different logic. If we are not in the last line, we print I plus 1 stars. So let us do that. So we're going to use for j equals 1, j less than equal to I plus 1, j plus plus. We're going to print a star. Otherwise, if it's the last line, then we're going to print exactly n2 amount of stars. Instead of line plus 1, we're going to print exactly line number of stars. That's it. That's the only difference. Now let's give it a check. We don't know if this works or not. Let's try it out. I'll change this hyphen to space again. Now let's compile this and let's see. Okay, very sorry guys. We were supposed to have j here. Alright, let's compile this. And again, where have I missed what? Again, j here is missed. I have no idea how I missed this. Probably because I copied the same line. So let's compile and try to run this. If I give 7, is that right? Think back. We went through the same exact problem when we solved this earlier. If you guys remember back, we went through the exact same problem earlier in our previous part of the pyramid. So where have we gone wrong? Think about this. No, okay, I have a couple of answers. Let me answer them. First answer is we should use j instead of j. We should use k. Not to worry, because you see this j loop ends right here. This j loop ends right here. So you don't have to worry about anything else. So here is where the entire problem is. Now, in this question, please remember the problem occurs because is this a condition? Or is it not a condition? It's not a condition, right? Simple thing. We missed out the concept of condition itself. It's supposed to be until. So let's try this now. Let's compile, let's run, let's take 7. We got our pyramid. Let's run again. Let's give 11. We got our hollow diamond. Done. Now let's give, let's say 15. We got our hollow diamond perfectly. But is this really the question that the interviewer asked? Was this really the question? No. The question the interviewer asked was something entirely different. The question asked was this. Whenever you're printing, you're not supposed to print stars. You're going to be given an input string. You're supposed to print the input string in continuous order like this. If you start at C here, you should start with K in the next line. If you stop at J here, you should start with A in the next line. You should print the string in that order. So for that purpose, I need to print instead of string, character of a, instead of star, we need to print characters of a string. So we need to somehow figure out how to find and print, let's say, characters of a string. So first, let us read the string. All right, let us read the string first. So I'm going to read it as cin greater than str. Now, to store str, we can create a variable of type string. We'll do that. Simple logic. Now, here comes the question. Let's say I have an index like I, or index for string, we'll call it as s. Let's say s is the index for string. Now, if my string is of 4 characters, let's say Jack. Now, what I'll do here is, every time instead of printing star, I will print str of s and then I will increase s. But won't it cross the string at one point of time? It will, right? Because our string is of smaller length compared to the entire length of the hollow diamond. So, in this case, our string is very much smaller. Our string is small compared to the length of the entire diamond. So, if I keep increasing s one at a time, at one point of time it will cross and it may give error, it may print random value, anything could happen. I don't want that to happen. So what do I do then? How will I make sure that after this string is printed, it should go back to starting character? Observe this. What are the indices here? If you guys observe this, the indices of the string are 0, 1, 2, and 3. These are your indices. Now, when you reach the last index, let's say when you reach the final index 3, instead of going to 4, you should go back to 0. That's the whole idea. Is this clear? Somehow we need to ensure that we need to go back all the way over here. This is the whole idea. Now, before going ahead, I have a couple of questions. Let me just answer them. So the first question that I have here is, let me just, sorry guys, let's see. I have a couple of, it seems that I have a couple of questions here. The first question I have is, does MNC companies apply Python language is allowed? If yes, then data structure in Python is easy to do or not? See, it's purely our choice. I'll just explain this. It is always our choice because you can implement data structures very easily whether you want to work with Java, C++, or Python. In all three, it is easy to implement. You don't have to worry. In all three, it is easy to implement. Okay, so that's nothing to be worried about. So I have one more question. NQT does not have exam fee. All right. As far as I remember, as far as I have seen this, NQT does not have exam fee unless something has suddenly been changed. Probably, as long as I remember, no. All right. So let's move ahead very quickly over to the next part of this particular problem. Now, what we're doing, yeah, here's what we were doing. We were trying to figure out, yeah, if you want to go through their course, as one of you rightly pointed out, their courses are paid. If you want to go through their course, but if you want to go through their exam, it's free. Now, before going ahead, I have one more question. Approximately, sir, approximately how much time is it required to learn data structures completely? See, we can never learn completely everything. All right, that's one thing I would state. What happens in case of data structures or anything you want to learn? Here's the idea. If you want to learn any like data structures completely, as in like at least trees, you have to learn these minimum things: linked lists, double linked lists, stacks, queues, map, set, tree, and graphs. To learn all of these, if you go through any good textbooks or many different websites, maybe a week is more than enough. You have to learn time complexity as well with it. I have one more question before I go ahead. Does maximum company allow Python language? Most companies allow C, C++, Java, Python, all of them. All right. Now let us move ahead. Now here's the whole logic. Instead of printing star, our logic, instead of printing star, I'm supposed to print string of s and then I'm supposed to increase that index. But when I increase that index, I need to remember what is the size of the string. I need to remember string.size as a separate variable here called length or something like that. I need to store it somewhere. After I store it somewhere, every time I increase this, I need to check if it is equal to length. If it is equal to length, if it becomes equal to length, I need to make it back to 0. I can do it in that way, or whenever I increase this, instead of s plus plus, I can write it as s equals s, sorry guys, s plus 1 mod length. Now remember this, if s is 0, what is 0 plus 1? 1. What is 1 mod length? Length is 4. Any number that's lesser than 4, if you perform mod, you'll get the same result, 1 itself. So if you perform this, from 0 you get 1. Similarly, from 1 if you try, 1 plus 1 will give you 2. 2 mod 4 is 2 itself. Similarly, if you try from 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 mod 4 will give you 3 itself. But when you try with from 3, if you want to go to 4, if current S value is 3, if you want to increase to 4, 3 plus 1 gives you 4. 4 mod size, which is 4, is always gonna give you 0. That's when it goes back here. This is one logic we can apply. So let's see if it works. Instead of printing space, I'm just gonna write here. We have our string. We'll also find the length of the string and store it in one place so that we don't have to calculate it again and again and again. So I'll just use length or string length equals str.size. So in C++ we have size function to use this, and since I'm using this, I should also use hash include string. That's it. Now let's take this string length, and I need one more index. As we just talked about, we need an index called s. So let's do the same here. Instead of printing star, I'm gonna print str %c, a character, or we can also use cout. Str of let's say s, and then we're gonna write s equals s plus 1 mod size, sorry, mod str length, string length. That's it. So this is what I need to write everywhere. Again, since it's C++, you can leave it as printf, up to you, or you can replace it with space, completely our choice. So here again, I'm gonna write this. If anywhere we are printing star, I'm gonna replace it with this logic. Anywhere we are printing star, I'm just gonna replace it with this logic. That's it. So I have one question. By the time I answer this, by the time I write this, there is which topics to be covered for data structure for cracking coding exam in TCS or any other. As I pointed out earlier, you can pause the video later on and give it a check. I have listed out a few data structures. Those are the most important. If you try to work on those, that will be the most important ones to work with, right? So let's quickly convert this code and try to run it without any delay. So now I think these are some of the last ones which are working through. That's it. I think it should be done. And I just have to use cout/n, and that's it. Let's see if it works. I am not sure whether it will work or not. Let's try. Sorry guys, there's one little error. Again, string length is not declared. We have not declared it. We have just used it directly. So one little purpose. So I'm just going to use it as int string length. I have one question. Every time it performs length, can we store it in an integer and use exactly what we are doing? We are taking string dot size. Whatever string is entered by the user, we are calculating its size only once so that we don't repeat this step again and again. We are storing it in an integer called string length, and we are using that everywhere. That's it. So let's go ahead. Let's compile this. Now let's run this. I'll give 7. Now I need to give a string, right? Let me give Jack as the string. Now what has happened? If you guys observe, is this the right output? What do you think? Something went terribly wrong, right? Something went terribly wrong in our program. This is not supposed to happen. So let's take a look at this. Let's try to figure out what exactly happened here. What happens here is, the moment you press enter key, a lot of people go wrong in this. A lot of us go wrong in this because when such a question is asked, 90% of us find it difficult to solve. I've entered 7. I've entered my string called Jack. Now why is there an error? The error occurs because you're pressing enter key here, right? Enter key itself is considered as string. Now if enter key itself is considered as string, I don't have a lengthy string. So something is wrong here. So there are two ways to solve this. One way to solve this is read string before number. I'll explain both ways, don't worry. As far as TCS NQT is concerned, you will get a function which we have to fill, but we're still going through this so that we can learn even better. Alright, let's compile and run. Here I can give Jack and 7, and what happens in this case? Is this right? I'm giving the string first and then the number next. Something went wrong, right? Something terribly went wrong. So, whenever you work through strings, I'll repeat, whenever you work through strings in C++, you have to be very, very careful of using certain terms. So, one thing I'll explain this logic later on. That is why reading number first and integer next, or integer first and number next, makes a difference. Because whenever you read number first, enter key is also considered as a character. Whenever you read let's say string first, enter key is not considered as a character. You can read string separately and then 7. Now, that's the whole idea. Now, before I go ahead, I have one question that I have been asked. The same topics mentioned are to be covered in data structures to crack MCQs as well. Yes, but if you want to work through MCQs, you need to know how the data structure is implemented in detail, its time complexity, its space complexity. Work through it, try to implement it, look at a few examples, look at where it is used in real world scenarios. If you do this much, then it'll be way too easy for you to solve. That's the basic idea. Now, let us move ahead over here. Now, before segmentation fault, here for your reference, because I want you guys to help me out with coding, because let's assume I don't know programming. Okay, let's just assume I don't know programming today. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys a simple clue. I'm gonna write here, let's say str, and I'm gonna write here, let's say n. So if I run this, let's quickly give this a try. I give Jack and then 7 as my input. Now, Jack is printed, but what happened to the next number? Jack has been printed. I got to print the string Jack, but I was unable to print the number. Something went wrong with the number printing, right? Let's do the opposite. Let's print the number first. Okay, don't worry. Let's print the number first. Now let's run this. I'll print Jack first and then number. Now what happens? I'm getting an error. So this shows that you're getting somewhat of an error when you print the number. Now look back at this concept that I stated. Whenever you print a number and press enter key will be considered as a part of string or something like that. So how can I solve this solution? How can I solve this problem? Can you guys think about this? I'll give you just 30 seconds of time. Let's see. Think through. I'll give you guys just about maybe 20-30 seconds of time. Let's see how many of us can try to work with this. So I've got a couple of answers over here. All right. See guys, simple logic. I'll explain. Many of us may never have heard of this. Many of us may never know this. But whenever you want to read a string and an integer together, never use cin for string. Please never you use cin for string. That's something we will always say not to do. Instead, we will always tell you to use a different function, which I'll show you in the official documentation, that is called getline. We may never be familiar with this because when we learn C++ or something like this, we don't learn it in this depth. We don't learn to figure out like, hey, we are entering this, then we are entering this, how to read and everything. So unless you use getline, you will always expect some problems while working with these programs. You will always expect some problems while running through this. So I think with all the bandwidth going through YouTube, the virtual machine has some problems because I think my virtual machine cannot access internet properly when my host system is accessing some minimum threshold. I'll try to figure it out and solve it. But anyway, let me just explain it. Anyway, I don't need this for me to explain. Instead of using cin, we'll use a function called getline. And in getline, you have to figure out what you're reading from where. We are reading the string str from where? From console input. This is the format of getline. We are reading from console input a string. Now if you try running this, let's take a look at this. I'll use Jack and then 7. Now what has happened? Did it work? Let's take a look at this. First I'll take Jack, then I'll take 7. Did it work? No. Something's still going wrong, right? We're somehow figuring out that no, none of our programs work. Simple logic. Now, just to show you, because I want all of us to try to debug this. So let's try a different thing. Let's give this a try. Now I'm gonna give my number first, and then I'll go for the next line. The moment I go to the next line, what happens? It gives the same error, that is segmentation fault. So these are certain problems that you can expect when you try to read. I'll just point out, these are certain problems you can expect when you try to read strings and integer together. When you read string and integer along with each other, you will definitely expect these problems. So for now, for our understanding, here's what I'm just going to give you in short. Take this: n equals 7, string equals Jack. I'll explain the other scenario, not to worry. I'll give you the complete solution. Now if you try this out, okay, we are not supposed to print this. Let's remove this. Now if we try it out, we get the right output as expected. Here, is this correct output? Is something slightly missing? Everything is correct. Of course, everything is almost correct. But something, somewhere, something has slightly gone wrong. What is that? Our initial value. Our initial value is not J, because we have not initialized S to 0. When you initialize it to 0, you get the right value to input, that is J. This is your whole program. So you can even try the same thing with something like a larger values as well, like 15 as well. I'll just give you a very quick logic, very quick example. Even now you can give this a try and you can see the entire like big hollow diamond printed. So this is how you can try to work through these sort of programs. Now, moving ahead here, I'll just give you guys one clue as to how to work through or how to work with reading string and input together. I'll give you the solution. Alright, not to worry. Pretty simple and easy thing to work. Now, I'll explain this. To understand how to read string and let's say number together, I'll just save the program here for our reference first. Now, I'll quickly explain this without taking too much time because we want to go through Java and Python very quickly. So I'm not going to take too much time. Under a minute, I'll quickly explain this so that we don't go through too much time. So here, if I want to read, let's say a string and an integer, I'll take something like int n and let's say string str. Now, when I want to read an input string, I'm going to use Getline. When I want to read a number, I'm going to use, let's say, cin. So I can use cin for n and I can use Getline for string. Now, if I print these values, I'll give you one more function. We're not going to take much time. I'll try to finish this off as quickly as possible. So I'll first enter the number like 5 and then I'll enter the string. Now what has happened here? The moment I go for the string, it says it's empty. It says there's nothing here. That's because your enter key itself is considered as a string. Your enter key itself is considered as a string. After your enter key, whatever you type is considered as the next string. So this is the whole logic. This is always what happens. Your number, enter key, and then string. This enter key itself is considered as a string. To avoid this enter key considered as the string, you need to ignore one line. To ignore one line, we can use cin dot ignore function. So there are a lot of different things that we get to see, that we get to work with in C++. Let's give it a try. 7 and I'll give Jack. Now you get the output as Jack as a string and 7 as the number. So if you want to solve it back in your program earlier, so we have gone through this all different ways. If you want to use C out, pretty simple logic, sorry, not C out. If you want to read from input, pretty simple logic, use C in N and use C in dot ignore, and then use getline of C in comma print. That's it. This is the best way to read number as well as strings. So a lot of people find this very difficult. A lot of people find this highly difficult to work with. So this is something which we need to work on and remember. I have one of you stating reading string and integer together is working properly on an online compiler. It purely is compiler dependent because some compilers may internally assume that enter key means nothing. Some compilers assume that your enter key is also considered as a part of input. So it purely depends on the compiler as well. But I'm using the most common GCC compiler here, right? And I have one more question. Will this be a problem in C also? C, yes. But if you're going for interviews, please never go through C. That is one thing I would suggest. Please go through C++, Java or Python only. For interviews, I'll give you a simple trick. Please never write answers in C because you want to be familiar with how to implement data structures in C++ with just one line of code. In C, if you want to create a stack, you need to write 10, 20, 30 lines of code. In C++, if you want to implement a stack, you just need 2 lines of code. That's it. So which is better? C++, right? So that's why we always prefer to go through C++, Java and Python and never with C. That's the whole idea. I hope that gives the solution to this problem. Now, if this is clear, shall we quickly take the same program up and convert it to Java? What do you guys think? Will not take too much time because it's a simple and easy thing. Let's really not take too much time whatsoever. So we'll delete all the functions that we have here. Previous program. I'm just gonna take an integer and remember, if you want to use, let's say, Java, the logic becomes very different if you use a string. Please remember, if you use character array in Java, you don't have to access index. Sorry, you have to access index. So in this case, let me just quickly show this to you. If you use, please note this. This is for everyone who wants to work on Java because it's something most of us again go wrong in. In Java, you have a concept called string and another concept called character array. If you go through string, if you go through the concept of string, you cannot use index because string is a class. You will be creating objects of the class. Using objects of class string, you cannot use index. Instead, you have to use a function called dot character at followed by the index I. If you use a character array, then you can use something like array of index I directly. This is the big difference when it comes down to character array in Java and when it comes down to strings in Java. So please remember this difference very clearly, guys. So what we're going to do here is just according to your choice, you can either create a character array or a string. Again, if you use a string, just remember you need to ensure that you're gonna use index I. For us, we are always used to string str. We're just gonna do the same thing. So I'm just gonna use str equals sc dot next line. Now, just to show you guys, will this problem even exist in Java? Will this problem? Let's see. Let's try to print it. System dot out dot println. It's not system, it's system. If we do system, we'll get a compile time error. So let's give this a try. We're just printing str plus a space plus n. That's it. So let's try running this very quickly. Let's try it out. Code.java and done. Java space code. So the moment you do this, we first need to enter an integer. I'll enter 5. Then I need to enter a string. Is it letting me enter a string? What is it doing? Is not there. The string itself is not there. So the moment you say next line, enter key itself is considered as the string. Same problem happens even in Java. When you are reading an integer and a string like this, you will get this problem. To avoid this, you need to read one more line in between and not store it anywhere. This is ignore one line. That is the enter key, whatever is entered will be ignored. Now if you try to compile and run, if I give, let's say, something like 5 and Jack, now I'm getting the right output. So this problem, this issue doesn't exist only in something like C++. It may also exist in Java depending on the compiler. But then again, we don't need to worry about this more if you're given a program where you're given input in a function and you just have to read it in a function. Like for example, you will be given a function like this. You'll be given one single function like static void print pattern of string str comma int n. This is what will be given to you. So all you need to do is just this part will not be shown to you. This is invisible to you. Only this part will be visible. You only need to write within the function. So that's how questions can generally be expected. So let's go ahead here and call the function that is print pattern of string and n. Let's quickly do this without taking too much time. So we'll take the same code as we have here without taking up time at all, and we're just gonna copy it, paste it, and basically run it. So we basically have the code. We're just gonna do the same thing over here. Now remember, first thing we need to do is create two values, n1 and n2. Let's just take int n1 and n2, and remember the same logic as before. You don't have to worry much. I'm gonna copy the same logic here. N1 is equal to this, N2 is equal to this. That's it. Now after this comes the difficult part. We also need to create all these variables. Let's also copy this. Alright, once this is all done, then remember the size of the string or length of the string in this case will be stored in, let's say, str underscore length. Let's also do that. So we'll take int str underscore length equals str dot length. Once this is done, you've got your rest of the code entirely to be copied, nothing to be changed except for wherever you're printing str of s, you need to change that print statement. That's all. That's the only thing we need to change. I'm going to copy this entirely, paste it over here. Very simple logic, very simple logic. Wherever cout I have, I'm just going to replace it with system.out.println. That's all. Println with nothing. That's all. This is all I'm going to replace it with. And wherever you're printing str of s, you can't print index here. You have to use str dot character at index s. That's the difference. So I'm going to take this, and since we have a lot of these, I'm just going to copy this and paste it here, all of these places. So we don't have to worry much, and we're just going to be like, you know what, it works. So here I'm just supposed to print a space. Again, no print ln. Please note, it's all print, no extra line, because extra line should only be done here. Next line. Everywhere it's just system.out.print. No new line whatsoever. New line only goes after the entire pattern. After the entire line, that is. So let's give this also a quick try. So let's try this with a space here and see what happens. Done. Now let's try the last statement. Done. Now let's see where exactly we went wrong. I think we may need to put up a few semicolons somewhere here and there. Let's just add that. I think we've done all of it. Let's compile. Let's see how many errors we may get. We have just one error in, let's say, line 20. Let's quickly go to line 20. We have missed out semicolon. Let's add that and let's try running this program. Let's compile and let's run. And when running, I'm just going to give some simple value like, let's see, which are we reading first, the string or the integer? What are we reading first? If you look at this, we are reading number first, then the string. So let's read the number first. The number is, let's say, 5, and or let's say 15 lines, and the string is Jack. So that is supposed to give us the entire pattern. Is this correct? If you guys observe, something went wrong, right? The simple logic as to why something went wrong is, instead of println, we're supposed to give print. That's it. That's the only difference. That's where we went wrong. If you solve it, you've got it. You can give that is integer first, if I'm not wrong. Yes, let's give 15 and Jack, and we should get our pyramid or hollow diamond pattern as expected. So this is your simple program to get hollow diamond problem. So is this, I hope this is simple and easy for us to work through. We've basically spent a couple of classes through to work through this. One of you is stating that the screen is a little blurry. I request you to please check your network connectivity and try to change the quality of the video from 144 to something like 360, 480 or something like that. I'm pretty sure that will help out. Now, this, I'll just copy this for our reference along with the previous C code and share it with you guys. So with this done, I'll quickly go through this into Python. In our next session, we'll do that. I want you guys to give it a try as well. We'll quickly try to convert this into Python in the next session, and once it is done, we'll go to the end of it. That is, I'm just going to copy these two codes for your reference. That is Java and C++ for this particular program. I have one question by the time. Is technical interview mainly asked from data structures or from resume? See, when it comes to online interviews, nobody checks your resume. It's only asked from their point of view. When it comes to something like, let's say, resume, it is mostly in face-to-face interview where they may ask you what's your favorite subject, how do you work with this concept, and so on. That's one thing. At Kalesh's question, I'll repeat again, the question is very vague. There are a few things missing in that question. I'll let you know later on as to what things are missing. Please check the comment line shared earlier. At the start of the question, you'll get to know why I stated that the question is vague and what is missing in the question for you to get the right answer. Please do check that once, all right? And I'll also communicate later on. Don't worry. All right. So let's just share this. This is the code for hollow diamond problem that is done on 15th July 2021. So what I want you guys to do over this is, please do give the same program a try. If you're willing to do this, please do give the same program a try in the language of Python. Let's see how many of you will be able to do this. And in tomorrow, we're going to go through a very, very new and interesting problem. After we're done with the same problem in Python, we're going to look at a couple of very, very interesting and different kind of problems, which I believe could be of huge importance for us to learn logic building to solve a lot of interview questions. So we're going to do that in the next session. So please do catch up and join us tomorrow. And until then, keep practicing, keep preparing, and check our channel for more content. Have a good night, guys. See you tomorrow.